what I saw best in them was in the last 60 days when we had to change our industry. And you know what? We're going to be way better for it. So is the rest of the real estate industry. But for my company, this whole new platform is going to be the change that we were looking for.
Welcome to the Big W. And today's guest, not only are we excited to introduce and share our conversation, but we have the absolute pleasure of both calling him a good friend for the last decade. In addition to being just an awesome family man and a great leader in the general real estate community in Massachusetts and New England, he is the co-founder, co-owner of Gibson Sotheby's International Real Estate, which is one of the largest luxury brokerage firms in New England. You know, they've got dozens of offices, they've got hundreds of representatives that work for them, but most importantly, they have a great culture. And a lot of that comes from the leadership and qualities that kind of Larry personifies.
You're going to have a couple of takeaways and a couple of key points in this podcast that you're going to lean forward and say, wow, that's interesting. And here are three that Matt and I found. You might find three more yourself. But there's one part where Larry talks about how his mother insisted that he do something and it completely changed his career path. Another one is when he compares culture versus production, what he considers more important. And Matty just gave it a little hint, but he'll break down why. And the last one that we found actually more humorous, but then he tied it into why it matters, is why Larry has been known to cry over a well-written menu. We thought it was just excellent.
A lot of us could probably relate to, but he says it in a way that's just so funny.
I've never cried over ordering a burger.
Yeah,
Larry might have.
This is definitely a conversation for the book. He's such an awesome guy, really fun to connect with, and we're grateful he gave us his time.
A lot of times you hear someone in real estate or someone in sales or someone in a specific niche, and you say, is this going to be for me? What am I going to learn? And I think what you said in the beginning is so important. What you can learn from Larry is how he takes his role of a dad, how he takes his role of a leader, and how he impacts that with Paul into the company. They don't just attract individual realtors, they bring on real estate companies under the brand. And he's had some pitfalls and he's had some massive successes and what he's learned from them. This is an excellent one to take away if you're a leader.
Amen.
Daughters, 42-year marriage. You serve as the president of the Mass Association of Realtors, director of GBAR, president of the Woburn Library, commissioner of the Woburn Housing Authority. I mean, on top of that, Gibson Sotheby's, all these accolades we're going to get into. I mean, how do you take your coffee? I mean,
it's about giving back. I mean, we were just talking about Anthony Lamacchia. He's a huge proponent of giving back. I'm the older version without as much energy as he has, but it's the same thing. It's about, we're so fortunate. I'm so fortunate and you saw my background. It's where I am is I have to pinch myself to think that I'm here. So I like to make sure everybody is a beneficiary of that, everyone that I can. I just have to correct one thing. You said I was president of the Greater Boston Association of Realtors. I've never been that. So I've been on a couple of boards there and such, but I don't want the G-bar coming after me.
My notes say director, not president.
Yes.
Okay. Well, anyone in that level to me just feels like they're above me, so they might as well be president. So my apologies.
The word director and president is quite interchangeable anyways.
Thank you. I'll take that.
Can you just touch a little bit on your entry into real estate? Because Gibson Sotheby's is one of the most successful firms in America when it comes to luxury real estate, especially in the Massachusetts area. But it wasn't always like that, and obviously it wasn't something like that day one. So tell us a little bit about sort of what the catalyst was to getting into the real estate industry.
I grew up, we moved a lot. We never owned a home. We lived in rentals our entire lives. My father probably moved 5 times over the course of till I was about 18. And the two places we stayed the longest were New York and Boston. So for me, what happened was there was Christmases and birthdays. It was family. There was 5 of us. That was it. We never had any other family around us. So I guess inwardly I developed an instinct for family, for team, that sort of thing. And I found that very important in my entire life. So, fast forward, 18 years old, I I attempted college. It didn't work out. So I came back to Boston, and I had to get a job in a factory. So I threw 100-pound bags for 3 years, loading trucks. And from the loading truck stage, I met the person that owned the trucking company. He fell in love with me because I worked very hard, and he moved me out into the trucking industry. So then I became a Teamster, and I was moving 18-wheelers around all day long for about, 11 years of doing that. And it was in Charlestown. It was under the bridge. It was in the 70s. It wasn't a great time for a person my age to be in Charlestown under the bridge. There was a lot going on. And my wife kind of drew the line one day and just said, you need to do something else. Because we had 2 children. I was living in Chelsea. And I had a real estate license in my wallet because my mother insisted I get my real estate license way back when I was like as soon as I was old enough to get a license, I had to get one because my grandfather was a realtor. And she thought I was him. She said, you have his personality, you have everything about him. So I carried this license around in my wallet for 3 or 4 years until 1984. And then my wife said I had to go find something else to do. I went and interviewed a bunch of real estate companies with a resume that wasn't very strong. No one would hire me. And a gentleman in Woburn, Joe Crowley, he was running Century 21 Collins at the time. He hired me. So I became an agent. And then it kind of just progressed from there. I became a manager. I was recruited by the Century 21 corporate to be a consultant to offices. So I ended up being a consultant in Massachusetts, and I became a VP for New England through the corporate life. And then I became a senior vice president of 1/3 of the country for business growth, which was merger acquisitions and affiliations. And this is all with Realty Corporation. So I got my master's in real estate, I said, going through that entire endeavor.
When we talk to people who start in sales and they go to management, it has like very different paths for some people. Some people instantly miss sales and they actually just kind of fluff off management a little bit and they become that manager that nobody really likes because everybody knows they really want to sell. They really don't want to be a manager. Other people like yourself really find out like I'm actually a way better manager than I ever was a salesperson. And it seems like that was more your path. When did you know that was going to happen? Like, how could you feel that inside you changing?
I think it was when I joined Realty. At that time, it was called HFS. It wasn't really. It went through a couple of names, HFS, Sender, Realty. I think it's when I joined there and realized that I could create a team that would be productive and still keep our compassion. And a lot of people in the industries, and especially in the real estate industry and the corporate life, there's no hearts beating in there. That's all about feeding the investor. And that environment wasn't much different, to be honest with you, but I decided I was going to bring a heart into it. And when I did, I developed teams that never left me. And when I left that job after 11 years, I had the same team essentially I started with 10 years before that. The other groups that had these same opportunities it was called churn and burn. They just went through, because we had to meet a number every month, every quarter, every year. So if you didn't meet the number, there was nowhere to hide. You had to either hit the number or go. My guys hit the numbers. And it was then I learned that if I can gather enough good people around me, that I'll be fine. And truth be known, I wasn't a great real estate agent. I mean, I did okay. I paid the bills for my family, but that wasn't probably my strength. My strength was creating a team and creating opportunities. And that's kind of how it all evolved into where we are today.
When I think of you, humility is definitely a word that shines through. And right next to that is crazy work ethic. And I feel like not just what you do and how you do it, but those that you surround yourself with, especially the closest, meaning your family members. I think it's pretty amazing to see how the work ethic of your family in the business. And anyone who knows you and them knows that you're very similar in that sense. You both are like willing to roll up your sleeves and you enjoy putting in the work and you really are all very humble and you shine with humility. Did you feel like that was something you had to teach your kids while they were growing up, or do you feel like they just watched you and you led by example and sort of assimilated those skills?
I think it was an assimilation because I learned that from my dad. He was the hardest working man I ever knew. And I think I followed his suit, and I think my kids were, when I was working for Realty, I was leaving on Monday and coming back on Friday because I commuted to New Jersey and then beyond, all week long. So they knew that I was putting in a huge effort to bring them what they need to have, to survive and to enjoy lives. And I think that's just built into them, all of them. And I'm very proud of them. And my whole family's we probably all work too hard, but I don't believe in working too hard. I believe in working hard. And my leadership team, they reflect the same values. I have a great leadership team. I won't go through them all because I'll probably miss someone, but that's who essentially runs our company. I'm not mentioning, I have a partner, Paul McGann, who's been with me since Century 21 Collins in 1985. And we've been together all the way through this. So he's a big, big help to this company as well. So I don't want to not talk about him. But he made me think of it was when we had a big decision to make last week. We asked the leadership team. I had an opinion. I gave them my opinion. The leadership team voted a different way. And guess what? That's what we did. Because they're on the ground and I respect everything that they say. And so we do everything together as a team. There's a moment when, 60 days ago when the 21 offices closed that we knew that Paul and I were going to be responsible at some point if this thing didn't turn the way it needs to turn. The moments of leadership, we have a team vote on that and we talk about it that way.
In sales, a lot of times you're kind of trained to think that try to be the best. And in management, you really try to surround yourself with people who are the best. One of the most successful qualities of a manager is understanding that you have to hire people better than you, not people beneath you. That really became a super big focus. It's not just the word recruitment, but the people that you're investing in. At what point in your journey here did you get like awakening into that moment?
It was funny. When Paul and I bought the company, Gibson Sotheby's, we bought a little 3-office company with not little 50 agents, so I guess that's a lot of agents. But we determined then that the culture of the company is going to be the most important aspect, not the production. So if we bring in the right people that fit our culture and act like we act and believe like we believe, they're going to be successful if we support them correctly. So we stepped right into the culture side of it, and we've never varied from that. We've not hired lots and lots of people that are huge producers because they wouldn't fit our culture. It wouldn't work for us. Our increased growth with agents is unmatched in the state. Anybody that joins us at 3 million, I probably can point to them to being 7 million within 2 years, and then beyond. So we make sure we support everybody so well that they can break through that ceiling, and they have to fit our culture too.
It's challenging when you're growing at such a rapid pace. How do you manage to keep culture so strong and focus on making sure that only the right people are part of the team when you're also, acquiring a lot of offices?
Our growth is strategic. Whoever feeds our company, that's where we look. And then we decide on the culture. I can tell you we bought on the Cape, Old Cape. It was a mirror image of our company. It was a home run for us. And we did that. They transitioned into us, and we're just doing incredibly well down there on the Cape right now. Then we have a couple of small ones that fit. We will pass on somebody if they don't fit. We've passed on many. It's just we meet a few times, we have conversations, and if there's a point where Paul and I step away and say, this isn't comfortable, we don't do it. We just decide not to do it and move on. And there's many of them out there as well. So you have to go through a lot of opportunities before you find the one that you want to pick. Our most recent one was Bonnie Meisner, Simon. That was a huge acquisition and a huge transition. But we met the owners. They had the same feeling for their people. Then we met their people, and they were very similar to ours. So that transition, again, has gone very well. When you consider the companies that were trying to take them away when we bought that company and what they were offering, which is we could never offer what they offer, and no one left us, that speaks volumes to me that the culture is just as important to them as it is to us. And hopefully we'll grow them and they'll grow us. And that's kind of the direction we'll go.
Putting money aside, because there's always going to be someone that can pay more, what value proposition can you offer that gets them to not only want to move forward, but then go all in long term with you?
Two things. One is the brand. And, I like to think it's my charming personality, but the Sotheby brand isn't going to hurt anyone. And everyone knows that. Anyone we talk to, when we first start the conversation, there's no one that's going to go to a seller and say, I have bad news for you. Sotheby's just acquired us. No seller is going to say, well, then I don't want to do this. And it's never happened really. And it will someday, but it's never happened really. The second thing is none of us compete on my leadership team. We don't compete. No one lists and sells. So it's a total devotion to the agents. We have an entire marketing department. I think there's 6 people in the marketing department. And then we have marketing people in each office. So let's say it's a 10 or 15 person marketing team that serves our clients and customers, which are our agents. When we explain all that to a company, they they stay on long enough to see if it's for real, because they don't believe it's for real. There's just so much support. And it's, this is impossible, but if it's true, I want to be a part of it. And guess what? Within 30, 45 days, they realize it's true. We are supporting you totally, because that's our job. I won't get paid unless you get paid. And if you keep that mental philosophy in mind with my leadership team, they understand that. Everybody that's successful creates our success. It's worked for us over and over again. When we do an acquisition, I'd love you two to be there one day, because we show up with the entire team. So there's like 25 people there, and we introduce them all and what their various jobs and that. They're blown away, because there isn't a company that is out there that has the support that we provide. Now, does that affect our bottom line? It does. Paul and I probably could make a whole lot more money if we cut things back, but then we're here for the long term. So we're not going anywhere. We want to grow this thing. And it's proven true for us. We started 3 offices. We're at 21 offices now. We started with 50 agents. We have 400 agents. We started at 200 million. We're going to cross 2 billion again this year. So it's worked for us, and we're going to just keep following that path.
A lot of your decision making is basically EQ, like emotional intelligence. You lead with a lot of how does it feel, and a lot of probably intense conversations between you and Paul to get on the same page and making sure that you're both keeping each other in check, because you both probably hear different ways, I would imagine, and see and feel different things. Do you have a moment when you look back when you let kind of a revenue decision get in the way, where maybe that big pot of money or that small pile of money kind of grabbed your attention and you made a decision that was kind of off character? Or has emotional kind of always been your way?
I'm always emotional, but I lead with my heart, and that's one of the things. Paul McGann will tell you, I've been known to cry over a well-written menu. I have a lot of emotions, and so I lead with my heart, and I feel with my heart, and I culture with my heart. If you don't fit, we're not going to do that probably. And Paul has a right to say, no, Larry, we're going to do it, and we'll do it. But we did make one revenue error, and I can't divulge it, but we made one mistake, that one acquisition that was abysmal. And it was a failure from the first day till the 4th year, when we finally got ourselves outside of it. And it wasn't anything personal. It was cultural difference, of business difference. It was one of the franchises that we had never acquired that particular franchise, and it's a totally different mindset than us, and we never could change it. So frankly, we stay away from that one brand. If somebody comes to us from that brand, we really have intensive interviews, because we don't know that we can make it work, because we couldn't make that one work.
What were some signs that maybe you could give Matt and myself and our audience here a sign that okay, we made a wrong decision? How did you and Paul come to grips with it? What were some of the conversations like between you two? I'm assuming there's a lot of frustration.
There was, and we were working very hard to try to make it work, because we had invested in it. And finally we sat down and just said, we've got to pull the plug. We may have to buy somebody out and be done with it, kind of a thing, because we just couldn't cross that bridge. And it was not without effort, huge effort. Just couldn't happen. And again, no reflection on that company. It was just a matter of, we realized this is 2 separate mindsets, and they're very successful at what they do. So, who am I to point them in another direction? But I just know that will probably not fit us culturally moving forward, and we've stayed away from it.
If you could go back, would you let yourself learn that life lesson, or would you try to talk to your own ear and say, don't do it?
I probably would have just had to learn that lesson. I mean, if you're saying, given what I know now, I wouldn't do that. But if I were then where we were at that moment, that was the right decision. And it just, didn't go right. That's really what happened. And we would probably do that again because of the market we weren't in. There was a lot of reasons, a lot of factors behind it that seemed to be the right move, but didn't turn out that way.
With a lot of companies that go from where you were and they have pretty fast growth, it happens in the first 5 to 10 years. It's actually not as common to see a company that's 10, 15 years old to then have this extra spike where you just hit the 5th gear and go into another stratosphere. And I feel like that's what's happened in the last 24 months, call it maybe a little bit more than that. Was there a catalyst that occurred, a conversation you and Paul had, a moment with the leadership team, something that happened that said, you know what, this is the time, this is the moment, we're going to take it to another level? Or do you feel like it was just a compound effect of work over the years?
No, actually, we had two bursts like that. In 2008, when the world crashed around us, we had personally just bought the company. We were in dire straits. But we knew then we either had to go into the fetal position or attack. I had a mentor that once said all real estate businesses are growing. They're either growing larger or growing smaller. And so that's the way we looked at it was, we either have to attack or we're going to get crushed here because it was horrible. So we went out and we actually acquired, I think we made 7 acquisitions between 2008 and 2011. Wow. And many of them were give me the keys and take my expenses. So we did that. It was a big gamble because we were carrying these offices when things weren't really firing. When it turned, we were sitting in all the right places. And, sometimes it better be lucky than good, I guess, but we happened to be lucky. We went to the right markets and they all turned very quickly when it turned. So all of a sudden we were in a good spot. Now we had to build the infrastructure around this larger company than our 3-office company. So then we went on our leadership crusade to find people that could help us grow. And there was a point in 2018 when we felt like, okay, again, we're at that point. We can just ride this out. There was some huge challenges out there in terms of competition, different ways of doing business. So again, we felt that sense of if we don't do something now, we're going to be swallowed up or be in a defensive mode for the rest of our lives. So we said, let's drop the gloves and let's go. And that's what we did. We went out and said, we're going to grow now. We had the infrastructure to carry it. Let's grow. And we had some rapid growth then. We did. And frankly, we're in a good spot right now, which is, again, better be lucky than good.
Well, I think it's more good than lucky, frankly. I think that those two moments, 2008 and also in 18, when we know competitors and people coming in and what they're doing to expand and what they're not doing to expand. And a lot of people would be very scared at those moments and not want to move. I wouldn't say fetal position, but just maybe not take major risks at a time that there's so much uncertainty. And it sounds like both those times you guys, was this like a gut feeling, or was it much more of a sit down over a couple of weeks and discuss and strategize and make the right decision?
Well, I'd like to think we strategized a bit, but it was very much a gut feeling that the world was changing quickly, and we were watching our competitors, good friends of ours, all of a sudden either getting eaten up or go away. We were watching it happen. And it was like, do we want to be victims or do we want to move forward? And that's what we kind of said. We're going to move forward and let the chips fall where they may. Maybe we'll fail. Maybe we still will fail. I don't know. But I know we're never going to just sit on our hands and wait. I said I hung around in Charlestown for 14 years and it didn't make me a wilting wallflower.
I think the other thing that kind of Matt and I are both listening to over and over that seems to excel for you is your partnerships. Like you clearly picked the right partner with Paul. You clearly picked the right partner with your wife. Both are very, very long-standing relationships. How do you work on those kind of relationships? And what kind of, when you look back over time, what have you and Paul done together that's really kind of kept the partnership fresh and kept it, you guys keep going. You guys both have the same mindset. What do you guys do to work on that?
We think differently. I think that's been the compliment all along. We think differently. We move in different areas, different strengths. We always say we fight like two old ladies, like two old sisters. So it's a healthy push-pull with us. And we're always working together for the same cause. Our families are intertwined in many ways. So he graduated college and joined my company as an agent, and we've been together ever since, all the way through Realty, all the way through the entire thing. So we've developed a more of a personal relationship than a business relationship, but our business relationship is very strong. And my wife is she's a saint. She's lived through it all with me. And it's just been, she's amazing. She's been the backbone of this whole thing, really. She's the reason I went in real estate, so there's a lot there that just keeps us together, and our kids are phenomenal. And we have a strong family bond. That's the thing that has always been important to me, and it's important to her. And I think that keeps us all heading in the right direction. Do we all bump into each other once in a while? Yes, we do,
Mm-hmm.
And you two do as well, I'm sure. And I admire, by the way, your company as I do Anthony's company. I just love seeing young people doing the right things and helping the industry, which is what you're doing. And I just can't say enough about how we're going to leave this in good hands. I guess is really what it is.
Earlier, you had said you had a mentor at one point who who said all real estate companies are growing, right? They're either growing, getting larger, or they're shrinking. We both love that. Could you speak to that mentor, how you found that mentor? Have you had multiple mentors? How does one find a mentor in the space of real estate in general?
Well, we were fortunate in the Century 21 system. If you recall, and you wouldn't because you weren't born yet, but back in the 80s, 70s, Century 21 was the premier real estate company. And I happened to be a part of that. And then when I get into corporate, I was a part of that. And they were very much into the learning aspects and the training. They had a program called Operation Orbit. Nobody would even know what that is. But what a phenomenal management introduction it was. And I used to take it just because I was a consultant. It wasn't because I owned a company. So I got to go through that numerous times because we were always bringing our franchisees in. And so there was a real strong basis of learning for me as we came out of the, Century 21 then was like the premier one. And it's all changed a little bit now. But so that started. Then I caught some good people. The gentleman that hired me in Woburn, Joe Crowley, no one else would hire me. My resume was I could back an 18-wheeler down the street. There was nothing there. He saw something in me and brought me on. So he gave me the first opportunity. When I get into the corporate life, there was a woman named Kathy O'Shaughnessy that was the boss, the number one. She was regional director. I was a consultant. She brought me along. She bought me suits when I think back on it. It was just, I caught the right person at the right time that saw something in me that continued to give me opportunities, but I had to perform. That was the other side of it. You got the opportunity, you had to make it work. And I did make it work. And so she kind of brought me into the corporate system. And then once I get in there, I did fairly well on my own, and I just got promoted from there. But those doors that opened for me were all just, I don't know, I say luck a lot, I guess. But, it was fortunate to have them in my lives at that moment in my life. Otherwise, if Joe Crowley never hired me, I would have my gold watch right now as a Teamster, because that's kind of the direction my head was. I was ready to do that. I just, I got a break.
We touched on your leadership team earlier, and you talked about how you and Paul went on a mission to find the right leadership team. When you were looking for the leadership team to surround you and Paul, were you looking for like-minded? Were you looking for opposites? What kind of advice would you give to those of us looking for leadership teams?
You said something earlier, Zach, that, you surround yourself with people that are better than you, essentially smarter than you. And I'm not being humble in that point. I can mention Colleen Barry. You probably all know Colleen Barry. We hired from within with her. I guess she started as an administrator, but not when I was there. She was a marketing director. We saw the potential in Colleen Barry all the way through. She introduced the Sotheby system to the agents. She's very, very smart. And so we brought her up. She's now our CEO of the entire company and a major force within our company. And then she and I and Paul went out and hired the other people. And so now having Colleen in the mix made it a little easier, but also made it different because she thinks differently than we do. And so anybody that got by the three of us seems to have been a good choice. We've not lost any leadership team. No one's ever really left us. They're all, 10 years and above in terms of the top management. And then my kids came in. They've been there 6 or 7 years now. So we have a very strong seniority in terms of our leadership team. But it all started kind of with Colleen's input. And she has a real good sense of that. And we have a good sense of what we're looking for, too. We have Mary Kate Lynch, who's an amazing marketing director. She, in the last 60 days, look what we had to do. We created a technology and virtual platform. It was around us. We were all looking at it, but nobody was touching it because it was easier to do it the old way. Guess what? We had like a week, 2 weeks to make this thing happen. She drove that with Colleen's helping, with Nicole's help, with Jeff Tarzali's help. So the team, what I saw best in them was in the last 60 days when we had to change our industry. And you know what? We're going to be way better for it. So is the rest of the real estate industry. But for my company, this whole new platform is going to be the change that we were looking for.
We've talked a lot about internally and externally that the last couple months has helped us identify waste and things that we were doing that we probably don't need to do or shouldn't do, but also push us towards discomfort and push us towards trying things that we've been kind of kicking the can for many years and finally fully adopted. So there's going to be a lot of growth that comes out of this. But it's been essential to double down on communication internally with the team. And I'm sure you guys have done a great job at that. But Can you speak to like the main messages or message that you've been giving, or your team or your leadership team has been giving to the entire Sotheby's community, that you feel like it's been really helpful through this challenging time?
I have personally sent 1 to 2 emails a week to my entire team, and I've never communicated that much with them except for when all this happened. And I've never been closer to the entire team than I have ever been. The Zoom meetings allow us to look at each other and talk to each other. The Cape, for instance, is a 2-hour drive for me to get there. So if I go down there, I probably see 1 office or 2 offices, and I'm back. And then maybe a couple weeks later, I go down again. I feel like I know them all. And the emails, the response to my emails have been overwhelming, actually emotional for me, because they're saying this is what we needed right now. It made me keep doing it. And I actually sent one out this morning because I feel like now we have to reach out and touch each other and say, here's what's going on, here's where we are, and I actually congratulate them because we crossed $1 billion in sales volume for pending in sales, the earliest we've ever had in the history of the company. Wow. On June 3rd. So I let them know that, we celebrate that. This last 60 days has changed our company's personality, changed the way we do business. And I think it's made us more personal, if I can say that, because I always feel like everybody's our family and we take care of them, but we really weren't as close with them as we are now.
Each story you give, it just seems like you pride yourself in really being a great listener and adapter. You've given a lot of credit to your wife, very deserved. You've given a lot of credit to Paul, very deserved, to your, I believe you said your grandmother and all these other people. But you really listened. What kind of advice do you give to other leaders? Because leaders don't always have all the answers. And in fact, they probably have maybe the least sometimes, because they're not actually the ones selling the real estate. How do you remind yourself that? Are there books you've read that help you with that? Or is that just an innate quality?
It's just, I think it's about being humble. You and I, we all go to these events, and if there's a microphone there, some people just can't stay away from it and expound and expand. They're not listeners. When I watch them, I say they're not. They're listening to their voices and they're doing what they do. I think the listening part came from me. One of the things we did was move around a lot. I was a new kid on the block all the time. I couldn't be the guy out front. I couldn't be the fresh guy. I was almost a chameleon because you didn't want everybody to turn on you until they finally knew who you were. And many times they did, and it was life. So I became a chameleon in a sense that I watched. I'm very aware of my world around me. And it's something that I think I grew up with, and so did my brothers. When you're the new kid, you're not going to be the mouthy kid unless you want to have trouble. And so what you do is you blend into the background and you watch what's going on, where it's happening, and you react to that. And I think that's probably carried forward for me all the way to my late 30s like I am now.
I didn't mean to laugh so quick, sorry.
Not the number of years in the business, Larry.
This is true.
In our industry, in the insurance space, generational legacy business is very commonplace. You see a lot of kids and grandkids and great-grandkids still in the same business, even owning the same brokerage as their grandparents did. You don't see it as much in real estate. But in your case, you've had family involved in the business and been integral in growing the business and all-in mentality and really creating a lot of value. But that comes with challenges. What kind of challenge have you found with having family in the business, and how do you guys overcome that?
My kids and that leadership team is much more in tune with what's going on from the technological side. And I can see them all kind of look at each other, even in Zoom when I'm talking. But what happens is I'll have an idea and then they can put it in motion. And that's kind of, I understand that, so I don't try to drive that portion of it. I'll think of something, I'll say it on leadership meeting, and I can see my kids and Colleen's minds turning, and they're going to figure out how to implement what I'm thinking. It's almost like the old school guy trying to drive the new car, but they can drive the new car. I don't have to drive it. And we butt heads and we argue. I mean, my kids aren't little sensitive kids. We can disagree over many things. We all listen to each other. And ultimately, we seem to make the right decision. And sometimes it isn't the one I want. But I understand my weaknesses and I understand their strengths. We try to work with each other. And the kids and Colleen are very patient with me, believe me.
When that happens, though, when you have an idea, they toss it around and they turn it down. And they say, like, Larry, we're not going to be doing this. That conversation, is it that poignant of like, Larry, we're not doing this? Or is it, Larry, here's a presentation of why we're not doing this and we have to talk to us about how that idea gets denied?
Yeah, if they're going to deny it, they come back with a really solid reason why, either through a presentation or a discussion. But the other thing that I require is don't tell me no, tell me what we're going to do instead. So when they do this, they always have an option for me. And then I listen to the option and I say, you know what, you're right. I was a little bit off track, but don't give me a no, give me a reason how else we're going to do it. The team does that. So if they come back to give me a no, they're always going to say, and here's what we came up with. And then we can talk about that. And usually that's the direction we go.
That's such a powerful nugget of value, because there's been so many of us are in positions where we can make decisions that affect a lot of people. And we're only seeing it from our lens. And if someone gives us a no, it's like, okay, well, I don't agree with that. But if there's no further discussion, it's like, well, we're still going to go with this plan. But if you come back with, this is another option, it just presents such a win-win opportunity.
No, it is. I love the team I work with, I'll be honest with you, even though they're my kids.
Let's say that you look at that idea, you're like, I have no idea how that's going to work. Like, that to me is left field. What is this snap face? What are they talking about? Like, how when they come back with that idea, are you like an instant yes man? Like, okay, you've thought this through, go for it. Or do you need that idea to marinate in your head? What does that look like?
I need it to marinate, and then I probably come back with another idea that's similar to that. Like, I don't give up that easily, but they know how to work it so that it comes out in the right manner. So I may see what they see and say, okay, but here's what I want to accomplish, and that doesn't seem to be getting accomplished. And it becomes that piece. It's a dialogue. It's a dialogue. Nothing's just accepted on face value, because we have to keep open communication.
You guys challenge each other the right way. It seems like you guys know how to challenge each other, and that's a successful leadership team.
So far, knock on steel.
Knock on steel.
Do you look at competition internally within the Sotheby's community, meaning like the largest Sotheby's businesses in the country, as a driver, a motivator to continue to grow and get bigger? Or is that not even on your radar, and you just look at it as, we're going to do the best we can possibly do given our circumstances and continue to grow this with the right people?
Yeah, it's plan B. I don't care about the others. I love Sotheby's is a very strong network. We all know each other, but I'm not in competition with the giants. And we don't want to be a behemoth. What we talked about earlier was a strategic growth. I'll give you a good example. Metro West, what a feeder for the Boston market. And guess what? What a feeder for Boston, for the Metro West market, and Cambridge. I don't want to leave them out because they do a lot there. The referrals between these two companies that we were missing, that we're now getting, I realized we probably should have done this 2 years ago. Every time we look at an opportunity, it's how is that going to benefit my existing company? If it doesn't benefit the existing company, there's no reason for me to be there. It's like being on an island. So everything we do, we look at as a connection to whatever we might have. And we've never had it in our minds that we wanted to be a 1,000 agent, 900 office company. We're shocked at where we are right now. But each one has been strategic, and we think it's been beneficial to everybody. And we're going to continue that, but it's not. I'm not competing with anyone else.
Have you found that you guys have collaborated well with other markets across the country, and has that driven the business too?
Huge. When we bring an agent in and they realize the referral network that they have that they've never probably tried to tap, we do well over $1 million in commissions in referrals, and that's just the Sotheby network. Anyone in California right now in Sotheby's is going to be sending it to our marketplace, the opportunity. And there's huge opportunities, huge feeder markets. New York is a huge Massachusetts market. DC is a big market. Miami is a market. And Sotheby's are very, very loyal to one another. So it's probably one of the strongest referral networks that exists. And we just essentially feed off of that. We don't have any other networks but that.
Data is important, but data doesn't tell a story. Matt, me, and you can look at the same piece of data and come up with a different story as to why that data happened. And I think in real estate, it's tremendous about how that looks, because if you look at data right now about how your year is doing, but you don't factor in COVID whatsoever, the data is just it's a number. It doesn't matter. You lead with emotion. How do you use data?
That I leave to Colleen and Nicole, and they're very much data driven. Although I have to tell you, every morning I pour over my books, I pour over MLS, I pour over the numbers that I can understand, the things that I understand, to try to see patterns and trends. And I share that with them, and then they'll come back with even more interesting numbers
Yeah, like that's cute. Yeah.
I'm glad you spent the morning doing that, Dad. The thing is, I do pour over numbers, but I'm not as acute as they are in terms of looking at them and seeing the trends. I have it's all, I don't want to say gut because it probably isn't, but I see markets and I see what's happening. Like my competition, the fact that I represented all the brands in Realty. Eventually, they gave me all the brands. So I went and I knew them intimately, and I knew my competition intimately. So for me to win that brand, I had to know who I was competing against. I'm still that way. I understand my competition very well, and I know. There's a book that 100 years ago that I read, Marketing Warfare, recent Trout. It was about knowing your strengths and their weaknesses. And I've always leaned back onto that book that I read 20 years ago because it impacted my life. It told me that, you don't try to go against someone that has a stronger position here. You find the weaker position and you move on. So I guess for me, it's the trends. I can do it in a business wise, but numbers, I leave that to the smarter people.
That's a really interesting comment, focusing on where you can compete, especially where you're stronger and they're weaker. In today's market, do you feel like that's just exactly the same as it was 20, 30 years ago?
It is. We heard the word disruptor till I was nauseous listening to it.
Hey, for the record, neither one of us has said that word in an hour.
But think about my 30 years in the business. There's always going to be a disruptor. I guess the 24/7 news cycle makes it seem more like it's so different. It isn't so different. Dick the Wolf was a disruptor. Dick the Wolf came in and changed our industry with the marketing that he provided. He's someone that Paul and I went and had lunch with before we opened Gibson Sotheby's because I have huge respect for him. And he's someone that I try to emulate. He created that family feeling. And we thought that's a really critical piece that he did. But he also understood marketing was what real estate's about. So he was a disruptor. He came in and turned our worlds upside down and just took over. That's a disruptor because he said what he was going to do and he accomplished it. Now the disruptor can say what they're going to do and they don't have to accomplish it. They just get the media every day talking about it. So there's been disruptors forever. We just have to know who they are, know what their strengths are, and play to our strengths.
If there's no disruptor, do you even have a market? If no one cares to try to enter your market, you might be in the wrong market. Matt and I look at that all the time. It's like, to use our own example, Geico is really good for the insurance community in general. They are doing something that we cannot do. They have an online widget that we are never going to have. And so to your own point, we know that if we made our website incredibly easy to quote online, it still wouldn't be as good as Geico. So we can't enter there. And so to your point, that's kind of what the book is saying, right? That
marketing warfare. You don't take them on there. You take them on with the personal touch, the honesty, the integrity. There's a whole other world you can take Geico on.
Yeah.
They're not a person in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you guys have really figured out that there's going to be marketing powerhouses there, and there's going to be some community family oriented. But if you can maintain a good balance of both marketing support, strong marketing skills, and new technology advancement, along with community and family, that's something that people are going to want to be a part of because it's a people business at the end of the day.
We always say the agents are our clients and customers. And if we take care of them, they'll take care of their clients and customers. There's a lot of companies that are corporations and all their clients and customers are the investors. When you think about it, at the end of the day, they have to return money to those investors. So that's who they're playing to. We play to our agents, and that's the difference between us and most of them.
Well said.
Well, Larry, I don't have many more questions for you, but one thing I'm curious about is that you're just such a likable guy. Like, you are just such a likable guy. When you smile, I feel like if I'm not smiling, like maybe I just didn't hear you. Like, it's just like you're such a likable guy. So I got to ask you this question. What are you going to do this week that's just going to piss somebody off at your firm? Do you do anything that makes people upset? Like, what do you do?
I try my damnedest not to do that, to be honest with you. And if there's something I really have to do, I rely on my leadership team to say, okay, this is going to have to happen. There is something actually that we've discussed for the last week and a half. That's going to be a hard thing for us to do, and you have to do it. When you're running a business, there's also that side of it. It's just, I used to have a saying, I do have a saying that says, I'm a nice guy till I'm not. And that's kind of how my life is. As long as you treat me well and we're all good together, I'm a great guy and I'll be a great guy. But if I have to be not a great guy, I can be not a great guy if I have to, and I try not to.
Mm.
Well, yeah, you revert back to your 100-pound throwing sack days and 18-wheelers. I wouldn't get in the way of you.
I think you're okay,
I definitely couldn't back up an 18-wheeler.
That's right.
At least not straight.
That's my claim to fame. I said there's not many broker owners in the United States that can do that. That's one thing I can do.